What's up guys, Dad here from GenerationGapGaming, and I'm going to nerd out a bit here and talk about my experiences with the Sega CD starting all the way back in 1992. That's right kids, I was alive in the 1900s, so listen to my words of wisdom regarding this misunderstood console, and I hope it inspires you to try out some of my favorite games on one of my favorite Sega systems. Stay tuned guys. Alright, first off, here's a little background info about the Sega CD. It was a CD-ROM add-on device for the Sega Genesis. I had the Model 1 console and saved up enough report card money to buy it back in the fall of 1992. I remember seeing the commercials for this system and being blown away by actually having real full-motion video implemented in the gameplay, and I honestly remember counting the days until it was released. This is the first system that I actually remember going to the store myself to purchase and not getting it for Christmas or a birthday or something. My parents and I went to many different stores near our house when it launched and we couldn't find it anywhere. I was pretty bummed out, and my mom wanted to go to a Kmart to get something she needed, but it was a good distance from our home, and to be honest, that store was pretty horrible for electronics. I just went back to the electronics department when we were there to browse, and there were 3 Sega CD consoles sitting there. I freaked out. I still remember seeing the box with the open CD tray and fog and everything. I got my report card money from my mom and couldn't wait to get home. It was an awesome day. Okay guys, now let's get into my favorite games for the Sega CD. I know there are many people that consider this system a failure, and I get what they're saying to some extent, because some of the rigidity and cheesy acting of the FMV games and the limited color palette within the system causing some pretty ugly footage in certain lighting conditions. But I actually have tons of great memories playing many of these FMV games. I've always been a fan of movies and anything cinematic. Cutscenes in video games were always a big treat for me and a satisfying reward for completing levels and bosses. And now you have this new system where you can actually interact with the live video throughout the game. It was like one big giant cutscene, and I think that's really what helps it stick in my memory so much. The first game I want to talk about is Prize Fighter. It's an FMV game where you are an up-and-coming young boxer trying to work his way up to be champ. All the footage was recorded in black and white, which actually gives it a more authentic feel in my opinion, and it gives off this raging bull vibe. Yeah, the acting's a little cheesy, but being able to be a first-person point-of-view match with a full-motion boxer in the early 90s was pretty groundbreaking. It even featured the famous ring announcer Michael Buffer. The game has a fun storyline, and my dad and I would play this together, which makes it even more memorable. Next up is Sewer Shark. I think this is one of the games that really stands out for the system. Again, cheesy acting, but the story is entertaining, and you have to remember coordinates to navigate your ship, shoot enemies, and you get some pretty rewarding cutscenes. This game was even included with the system in some of the later revisions of the Sega CD, so you need to try this one out if you have the console. You even get to see Joey's dad from Friends. Now on to Supreme Warrior. This is a fighting game that plays out like a kung fu movie. The blocking and hand and leg movements are very well integrated to an FMV game, with perfectly timed and positioned blocks and attacks being rewarded, which is satisfying. Having special attacks with little cutscenes throughout each fight are fun to watch too. This game isn't easy either, especially the final boss Fang 2, but you gotta try this one at least once. Now one of my top 5 games of all time, and that is Dragon's Lair. I remember seeing the original Dragon's Lair in arcades, but I was too little to fully understand the concept of its gameplay, but I was amazed at the graphics. I was shocked to find that it was a pretty identical home port from the arcade game. Now I was finally able to master every move for each scene and eventually kill Singe the Dragon, like you may have watched recently on Stranger Things. I actually made a Stranger Things Dragon's Lair tutorial for defeating the dragon. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check it out. Keep in mind that the colors aren't as vivid given the color palette, but it was amazing to be able to play this at home instead of the arcade. This game is an all-time classic. This is a requirement. You must play Dragon's Lair at least once in your life, if you want to call yourself a true gamer, in my opinion. Last but not least are 2 games that fall in the same genre, being that they are strictly just interactive movies, meaning that there is basically only figuring out people you want to visit and talk to in order to advance the storyline. I know this may sound a little boring, and you know what? Maybe it is to most people, but to each his own. The first one is Dracula Unleashed, which is an interactive movie by Icom Simulations. It tells the story of a a young American in London trying to avenge his brother's death at the hands of Dracula. It has a wonderful cast of characters, and it's actually well produced in my opinion. There are some moments in this game that I truly remember being scared to watch when I was younger. Very creepy score to go along with the story, and the final scene with Dracula is awesome too. The last game here is also produced by ICOM Simulations, and that's the Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Volumes 1 and 2 series. I've always loved murder mysteries and detective stories, and who doesn't enjoy Sherlock Holmes? You have 3 cases for each volume, and each case gives you an introduction to help you collect names and places you want to investigate. You watch the scenes play out, and when you think you have enough evidence, you go to the judge and solve the case. Then you get a wonderful epilogue at the end of each case explaining everything. One of the best things about this game was that I actually solved one of the cases with the help of my grandfather, who loved murder mysteries but never really had an interest in video games before. He saw me playing and asked what I was doing, and I explained, and he just sat down right beside me and we had a blast. He sat down the whole case. He named the killer almost instantly too. My grandfather had a very distinct laugh, and I remember him cracking up when we found out he was right, because I told him early on that I really didn't think he was right, so he definitely enjoyed that. Well, I hope I was able to put a positive spin on the Sega CD for you, and if you haven't experienced the system before, maybe you'd want to give it a try now. I know a lot of people may not agree with me, but it was a great addition to the Sega library in my opinion. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, let me know in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications when we bring more great content your way. G3 out.